So where does Dragonman fit into the new human family tree?
Well, it'll have to be a big cupboard to get his massive head in there. A massive human head has been found in a well that's forcing scientists to rethink evolution. What secrets have you got in there, Big Ed, you swine?
A remarkable scientific discovery has been made in China. Researchers say they found the skull of what they believe is a new species of human, which could be our closest evolutionary relative. If confirmed, Dragonman, as he's been named.
I'll be very sensitive about this person. He's a human being after all. Dragonman, or Pig Snout as we know him. Arsehole face. For being so out of order to this poor guy. The reason this story fascinates me is because there's so much presumed knowledge, isn't there? We feel like, evolution went this way, but there are sort of kind of glaring gaps in our understanding, even if you operate at the top level of, I don't know, paleontology, archaeology, I don't know even quite what the right word is for it, but we know very little. Human history is sort of impossible to hold in our hands. There's a great deal of mystery, and a discovery like this, for me, reveals that every presumption should be regarded potentially as temporary. That we could discover new civilizations, we could discover new narratives. We've been mocking of academics that have been open-minded to that kind of stuff, and of course we don't want pie-in-the-sky mad stories about sort of fairies and all that kind of stuff, although I do kind of like the idea. But finding the balance between open-mindedness and rationalism is perhaps one of the key challenges for all of us.
Meet the Dragonman. He's thought to be a new species of human that lived 146,000 years ago. A 3D scan shows a huge head.
Whoever that person was, I hope they weren't sensitive about the size of their head. Because this is all people are talking about. He's got a big nose. His head is massive and stupid. Excuse me, I'm sensitive about the size of my head.
With a brain that was about the same size as ours.
I just really like to think that if that was my head, and I mean I'm laughing about it, but it was a sort of a person with feelings that felt jealousy and sensitivity. Finally I'm dead, and these remarks about my big head will finally be over. What the fuck is this?
But other features, such as a prominent brow ridge, suggest something more primitive.
There's also evidence that this guy's dick wasn't big enough, that he had smelly breath, and he was rubbish at football.
A perfectly preserved skull found in the Black Dragon River province in northeastern China.
So just to give you a bit of clarity, because I'm hysterical, the discovery of a huge fossilised skull that was wrapped up and hidden in a Chinese well nearly 90 years ago has forced... Who's done that then? 90 years ago? No one will ever know about you. I love you, big head. Stop calling me that! Analysis of the remains has revealed a new branch of the human family tree that points to a previously unknown sister group more closely related to modern humans than the Neanderthals. The other day I went to the beach and I chatted to this bloke who was swimming in the sea, and he sort of said that they find 40-million-year-old shark's teeth there amidst the shingles and pebbles of the beach. He said too that he once found an axe head, and if it was established that it was older than 12,000 years old, which it was, then it must be older than 60,000 years old, because prior to because 12,000 years ago there was an ice age, and 60,000 years ago they were pre-human beings that were present in that part of the world. So there was a kind of an axe head found by just a regular guy, that Paul was his name, that was held by potentially Neanderthals, or potentially by other types of human being that we don't even understand yet. So when you foreclose on the possibilities of the future, when you foreclose on the possibilities of the past, know that you do so from a position inevitably of ignorance. And it's only when material evidence is unearthed that we sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, that's possible. This is relevant not only to the past, but to the future, relevant to the present moment, when imagining new directions, when being open to the past, primarily when being told that the orthodoxy is all, when the status quo is all, that this is the only way to run a society, this is the only way to be human. It is an open book. There are possibilities everywhere.
And this is what the researchers think he looked like: stocky and powerfully built.
Oh, right, try and make up for it now, saying he's powerfully built. The damage has been done, mate. You've gone too far. You've mugged him off for a hole in the nose. I actually quite like the guy. I look into his eyes and I see a version of myself. The skull appears to have a remarkable backstory. According to researchers, it was originally found in 1933 by Chinese labourers. To keep the skull from falling into Japanese hands, it was wrapped and hidden in an abandoned well, resurfacing only in 2018 after the man who hid it told his grandson about it shortly before he died. That's weird that he took that to his deathbed. Why didn't he bring that up earlier? What did he think was going on with old Big Ed? The researchers believe the skull belonged to a male about 50 years old who would have been an impressive physical specimen. Oh, a bit of kindness at last. His wide, bulbous nose, come on, allowed him to breathe huge volumes of air, indicating a high-energy lifestyle. Hey, baby, I'm living it up! While sheer size would have helped him withstand the brutally cold winters in the region. I suppose it's weird, isn't it? Because this guy now is an exemplar, or this specimen is an exemplar of an entire time, an epoch. And look at us, obsessed and infatuated with our own individualism and individuality. All of us a potential skull found in 146,000 years by some inconceivable creature that would just look and go, your nose is a bit big. Professor John Hawkes, a paleoanthropologist at the University of Wisconsin, said the idea of a new lineage of humans was a provocative claim because skulls can look similar even among distant relatives. What we are repeatedly finding is the differences in looks didn't mean much to these ancient people when it comes to breeding. They were very undiscerning. They'd literally do it with anyone. Just be a bit more respectful about these people in the past. An international team dated the bones to at least 146,000 years old. 146,000 years ago. Think of the generations, like everything that we regard as normal, democracy, civilization, urbanization, even agriculture, all just sort of a modern configuration. What is seen and what is presently understood is just a sort of a localized slang of meaning, that there is an incomprehensible array of potential just at the end of your arm, just beneath the soil.
So where does Dragonman fit into the new human family tree?
Well, it'll have to be a big cupboard to get his massive head in there.
7 million years ago, the first human-like creatures emerged. They became progressively more developed until 2 million years ago, our ancient ancestor Homo erectus emerged. That led to our close cousins, the Neanderthals, and us, and we coexisted a few 100,000 years ago.
I like that he's doing the job of the humans himself, and then it's me. Hey, baby! The rest of them are like graphics. Do you know, I think I'll do the part of the other bloke, modern man. It's good that they've at least done it descending a staircase rather than ascending, because the idea of the ascent of man is always a sort of a progressive notion of mankind, I should say, or humankind. It's like the idea that we're sort of culminating, and there's an obvious disregard in that we're at some kind of apex which forgoes the possibility of ongoing change. That's normally the way this information is conveyed, rather than what I feel is a sort of a sense of humility and awe that what's happening is like that life is sort of moving through time, responding through evolution, and that this is just our brief moment of awakening, something that should be cherished and treasured and honoured. And that a sort of assumption, the thing about assumption is it brings you to conclusions. This is what we are. This is, knowledge is so glorious. It's so beautiful, this scientific understanding that is emerging. But perhaps it ought to be housed in a kind of a fragile and humble acknowledgement that everything is subject to change.
Dragonman, it's claimed, is a new species that lived alongside us.
Dragonman, they've stuck him over there on the other side. We've had to put him on a reinforced bit of the staircase because of his big, massive head and smelly arse.
I've been studying human evolution, for the last 50 years or so, and this for me is one of the most significant fossils that I have seen and studied in all of that time. And it really gives us a new view of human evolution, because it looks like, on our analyses, this is a sister species to Homo sapiens, our own species.
The thing that excites me most about the story is the potential that is unlocked by the discovery and the opening for conjecture and speculation. This is not an opportunity to go all wacky and start believing in crazy stuff, but it does mean that we can have a more imaginative and open approach to understanding our past and the possibilities for the future. On my podcast, Under the Skin, which is available now, go to Apple and get it, I spoke to the brilliant Graham Hancock, who's often faced ridicule for his brilliant theories, because he is an imaginative, creative and exploratory academic who really knows his stuff but is open-minded. Here he talks about the dogma of archaeology, and that history, far from being an objective undertaking, is highly subjective, authored and directive.
So I found myself endlessly in opposition with archaeologists, because I feel I need to point up their failures and their mistakes, and to help the public to understand that we're not dealing with the word of God here. We're dealing with the word of fragile human beings who have their own egos and their own careers to pursue, and who may pursue mistaken lies. And unfortunately, these are the people who we've entrusted with interpreting our past to us.
I think that's interesting, that it's an interpretation of the past, that we're not there. there. We'll never know. It's full of mystery. The only thing that we know for certain is our own perspective, our own understanding. And even our own minds are haunted with conditioning and perceptions and things that might not be us. That's the programming of your family. This necessary embrace of the mystery is a sort of a fundamental point that I'd like to convey to you when looking at politics, when looking at the future, when looking at your emotional life, your family, that there is something terrifying and heartening about the unknown, that we're always on the precipice of the unknown, moment to moment. Furthermore, I'm sort of excited to look at this and go, hey, he was in this room where I am.
This has happened more often than it should in the world of archaeology, where fixed ideas have been held in place by powerful intellects, by powerful figures in the field, figures who have the power to withdraw funding from other figures. So archaeologists who opposed Clovis first, who did have evidence of earlier peopling of the Americas, had great difficulties with their careers. They were unable to get research funding. They were humiliated at conferences. They were publicly mocked. They were accused of making up their evidence and their information. And naturally, in that climate, as an archaeologist, you're not very keen to break the existing model. It's better to work within it, refine it, file things away, and have no arguments.
Perhaps what we can learn most of all from this big, gorgeous, giant head that we shouldn't be ridiculing and teasing, poor guy or female or whatever he was, who knows? Who knows how things were back then? You know, one thing we can learn is that when approaching new information, stuff that might be dubbed conspiratorial, ridiculous, wacky, or out there, we don't need to sort of giddily form a new society on the basis of apparently vanguard ideas. But we can be open to them. We can have an open mind to possibility in all areas. We can have an open mind to the possibility that we don't really understand each other, but perhaps we are connected in ways that we can't yet appreciate. What I get from this story is that until something enters the kind of lexicon of the known, until it can be sort of stabilised and established, it's potentially going to be mocked and ridiculed. This ain't just true in archaeology. It's surprising that it's interesting that it's true in archaeology, where I would have thought that objectivity would reign. It's a kind of a sort of a science. You know, but it's definitely true in more subjective arenas such as politics and philosophy and ideologies more generally. So perhaps this great big mad daft skull is a reminder, like a kind of emblem of the uncertainty amidst which we live and the necessity of being open-minded, accepting of potential difference and possible change. If the past can change, then God knows what the future may hold. If you enjoyed that video, please give it a like, subscribe, have a look at my channel Awakening. There's all sorts of meditations and spiritual stuff on there. If you don't subscribe to my podcast yet, have a look at the link in description. Link in description. I am old big head. Have a look at link in description. It'll tell you how to hook up to it on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please sign up to my mailing list. Go to russellbrand.com. I'm doing like live shows, and plus I'm streaming my Shakespeare stuff. I've got all sorts going on. Hence this massive skull of mine. I miss you, Granddad. I'm 146,000 years old, and I'll never forget you.